We play as Chai, a wannabe rockstar who enters Vanguard Technologies, signing up for a publicized project called Armstrong, where every customer is given the opportunity to replace one of the limbs to a mechanical enhanced version, hence the name. He goes through the procedure with breeze except for one small hiccup. He's now pronounced as a defect due to a foreign object, in this case his musical player, now lodged into his system, and per the stipulations in the contract that he signed, defects are to be disposed of immediately. Yeah, off to a great start. Mink! Allow me to go on the slight tangent for a second. I love this game. From its story and cast of colorful and bombastic characters to the music ringing in my ears and the gameplay. Oh, the gameplay. Typically, I'm very biased when it comes to platformers, as that's my bread and butter. So already I'm having a great time hopping and skipping along the levels, each more challenging than the last. Well, as challenging as a platformer can get. At that, with a combat system intrinsically linked with music and timing, and you've got me playing 2 times. Once during my recording session and the other just me having a great time. I wish there was more for me to say about this game, but unfortunately we have to get back on schedule. So with all that's being said, here's a question I want to ask you all. What does it mean to be a rock star? Okay, full honesty, I myself wouldn't know. Within the context of the genre this word is associated with, I'm the last person to propose an answer, as my relationship with rock genre, like many others, literally starts and ends with them existing on my playlist. Truly, my taste is an organized, chaotic mess of whatever makes my head bob. However, within the context of this video's central focus, I believe I got a few answers to give to said question. Through my playthrough of the game, Chai proudly parades himself as a rock star, but really, he's more of a wannabe than an actual one. He's ever so proud to the point of arrogance, would rather leap and think of the consequence later to the annoyance of peppermint, if he ever thinks of the consequence of his actions at all. He's dim-witted.
Looks like we found our AI.
This is a screensaver, Chai.
And his laid-back nature quickly puts him into danger, as he always underestimates his surroundings and his enemies. But that does make him a rock star. I'm not referring to him as a rock star in a literal professional sense, but more of a metaphorical one, as I'm proposing my first answer to the question I asked earlier to be identity. Chai fits a good profile of a rebellious character archetype. He may be arrogant, but flip it on its head and it becomes an enduring confidence as he overcomes whatever obstacle he'll face either by himself or with a team he can rely on. And on top of that, his recklessness and impulsiveness becomes bravery, and his laid-back nature keeps his head level-headed enough to adapt to whatever predicament he finds himself in. Well, not really, but you get my point. His established identity, flaws and all, bodes well with the genre he adores, as inherently, the rock genre and its subgenres to my brief research has always been about giving and amplifying the voices of the youth or anyone daring enough to address and challenge social norms, taboo subjects, and most importantly, authority. In this case, a rebellious teen challenges the grand authority, only views him and by extension his other peers as disposable, brainless idiots who will conform to whatever product or project they create. This also circles back to the irony of Chai as a whole, as his very character is somewhat of a paradox in my opinion. Think about it. I've just spoken about his rebellious nature in conjunction to the genre that embodies rebellion, and yet his flaws are so comically front and center that it's laughable when he calls himself a rock star, with the icing on the cake being that at the beginning of the game, it's established that he doesn't know how to play guitar.
It says Rockstar here. Do you even actually play guitar?
Well...
Figures. I'll talk.
At least he began his lesson towards the end, but still, even the very weapon he has fits into this narrative, as to put it bluntly, it's a trash disposal. His mechanical arm's only purpose is to take care of trash. It even includes a trash picker and a whole ass magnet just for magnetic disposables, and yet the very essence of his character, and quite frankly his music player, has turned his garbage disposable tool into a musical based weapon to be feared of. An extension of his character, if you will. Speaking of which, what's a rock star without the crew he plays music with? As obvious as it sounds, every rock band has multiple members in it, and Chai's metaphorical band is no exception, much to his initial disdain. Simply put, as much as Chai is quick-witted and confident enough to even become a leader of his own right, there's so much he's incapable of doing on his own, mainly due to his aforementioned reckless incompetence, hence the steady growth and existence of his crew, of which there are 5, each with their own respective identity they wear on their sleeves. Keeping the introduction short, we have the first 2 members, neither a hacker that can hijack any technological obstacles, carry 2 pistols, and capable of carrying 100% of the brain cells? Well, not to worry, the sarcastic and spunky Peppermint's on the line, accompanied by 808, her robotic cat, who serves both as reconnaissance, as a teleporting tool alongside Chai, and as an adorable best friend, and that's coming from a dog lover. Next we got Macaron, a kind giant who takes over Peppermint as a crew's great mechanic, capable of breaking through tough obstacles much to his disdain, and Cinnamon, a blunt yet comical psychiatric robot always ready to give character evaluations for much needed self-reflection. And last but certainly not least, Corsica, ever so level-headed in her decision making and ever so diligent as she was originally the head of security at Vandalay Technologies. Wherever she goes, a powerful gust of wind follows. Literally. These are Chai's crew, who are united in the same conviction that Peppermint has been carrying since the very beginning of the game. A conviction that, while I'll touch on shortly, puts them at odds against the company itself, whom, while each of them are bringing their own personalities similar to the crew, said personalities only exist and are inflated by the people they've either subjected under their control or, in Kyoanimo's case, curated through the support of the masses who are none the wiser. Frankly, the members of the Vandalay Technologies perfectly mirrors Chai's crew. One party who are constantly at odds with each other only persists thanks to the outside influences, with the exception of Roquefort, who is indebted to Kale for saving his life. Meanwhile, the other party, similar in its dysfunctionality amongst each other, is instead stemming from that trust towards each other and reliance to hold each other grounded. In other words, they don't look to outside forces for validation, only through each other. And speaking of which, most of this game is built on irony, or at least this literary technique has been used very prominently throughout the game. For instance, the museum at the Vandalay Technologies that showcases these robots as suitable for home and everyday applications are by far the most dangerous and deadly. The very hilarious fact that we don't get to fight Sansa on a one-on-one fight despite being listed as a boss to overcome like his fellow co-workers, and lastly but most important of the subtopic, the whole Project Armstrong itself.
Promised me the best of the best, Mimosa.
Production asked, for test subjects came. Marketing delivered.
Don't pin it on Rekka! Tell that grandstander Zanzo in R&D.
We need people with influence, and you're giving me losers.
It'll work.
It better. No slip-ups and no defects.
Another answer I'm proposing to the question is rebellion. Okay, sure, I just spoke about it earlier in relation to Chai and his character, but bear with me for a minute or two. What is Chai rebelling against? See, not every rock star needs to have a motive to confront, as making music for the sake of passion and joy is just as motivational and fulfilling. However, there is a significant amount of rock bands that make music in opposition to an ideal they wanted to confront. Here's 2 examples I looked up that I'm sure some of you that are fans of the rock genre are all too familiar with. Way more familiar than a casual normie like me. Rage Against the Machine, a rock band formed in 1991, are well known for its lyrics containing anti-authoritarian and anti-establishment themes. Such is the case with one of their albums called Battle for Los Angeles, released in 1999, which covers and references topics and issues persistent in the band's hometown, which includes the following but not limited to police brutality and systemic issues that contributed to racial tensions. And an obvious but most well-known example on the internet being Pink Floyd's The Wall, which mainly explores a character named Pink, who builds a metaphorical wall around him to shield himself from being emotionally harmed, along with a plethora of psychological trauma and growing isolation that contributed to the construction of Pink's wall. In essence, each trauma is another brick in the wall. With this in mind, I return to the question I posed for this section of the video. What is Chai rebelling against? That's an easy answer. It's Vandellay's toxic work environment and their unethical consumerism tactics. Let's start with workplace. The entire setting of the game takes place in the Vandelay technologies, with each level after the other presenting all 6 of the facets of the company. As we explore and beat the levels one by one, we're greeted with NPC interactions, cutscenes, emails, and notes scattered throughout the level that all paint a terrible picture of what all the employees have to face every day working at the company. A few examples that come to mind are the countless work hours all the employees need to fulfill, with the inclusion of an extra day of the week in the work schedule only exists to have said employees work extra hours with little to no breaks. On top of that, there is a clear rush out of products to the public with no proper inspection of whether they'll work in the first place or even an inbuilt safety precaution. And there is also unanswered email complaints, with some even outright discarded under excuses. In addition to all of the listed problems that plague this company, we also get to interact with Corsica, Macaron, and a few other old Vandelay robot models who either worked at a company previously, who just recently lost their job, or still remained working under Vandelay.
Noticed you have the old Vandelay logo on you. Must have been here a while.
Yeah, I'm BK.
Should I know what that means?
Sigh. Before Kale. Before everything changed around here. Back when we were responsible developers.
Meaning?
Clearly me hinting at my disappointment in the current management isn't clear enough for you.
Well, you can at least pretend to be happy.
That's admitting defeat. I'll just keep hating this job until then.
Wait, was that you hacking the test labs?
Just my way of showing who's boss.
But he works for Vandelay.
Yeah, used to be the head of R&D under Roxanne Vandelay. Then Kel brought in his crew, and now this Spectra.
A disgruntled employee.
He never understood Roxanne's vision for Vandelay. Just went along with Kale's demands as long as he got what he wanted.
Glad I don't work here.
Took my job, my life. He's ruining the company's legacy.
Well, let's say we're taking this guy down.
Seeing all of this yelling and chaos makes me yearn for the old days of Mr. Macaron leading us. I hope he returns one day so I can once again do a great job for him. Mr. Macaron, you're here!
I'm gonna change things up around here. First step, getting rid of Zanzo.
Oh, how I support that decision. Please do a good job.
So now that you're here, why Vandelay? Why side with the bad guys?
You know as well as I do, they didn't seem like the bad guys. When I was growing up, my home was the site of a major ecological disaster. Roxanne Vandelay led the environmental cleanup and helped everyone in my city start again. She changed my life. She inspired me. Working here was all I ever wanted.
And now, not quite what you expected.
I had my doubts after first meeting with Kale, but I thought that's just how things were done. Now I know that's not the case. This isn't the company I idolized growing up.
Furthermore, it is not just the toxic work environment that rots within the company's shining exterior to the public. It's also the dismissal of the legacy the company once had, and we get to expose it via Peppermint's subplot. Upon uncovering a top secret project, which we'll touch on soonish, we soon learn from the deep resentment Peppermint had over her brother Kale, whom through exposition and a tour around the Vandelay Museum reveals that Kale took over their mother's company, all the while undervaluing her work with the help of Mimosa's marketing prowess.
We all know Kale Vandelay, our prodigious leader. But where does the story start? Originally Vandelay Solutions, we were once a small little startup. Roxanne Vandelay, designing chips and robotics in her garage, would sell them out of her car. Not impressive, but you have to start somewhere, I suppose. Look, that is the original truck on display.
They don't mention those robotics led her to solving a global energy crisis. It's almost like they're mocking her.
And finally, but certainly not least, is a top secret project that Chai and his crew have been trying to uncover throughout the game. Project Spectra. Remember this dialogue exchange?
As much as I enjoy those, no. There's no data collection in this code.
So, Vandalay doesn't care about me personally.
Unusual for a tech corporation. All this seems to do is input information.
Before, I never really thought much about it, only thinking that they really did not care for Chai as a customer and opted to collect data from anyone else who underwent the Armstrong procedure. However, after watching my footage again, suddenly it all clicked. The entire premise around Project Spectra is to allow Vandalay Technologies full access of the brain to those who have bought anything from Vandalay, as the AI program itself has been installed into the products. Here's the reasoning for Spectra's existence from Kale himself.
I know you probably think Spectra is nefarious, but I disagree. It's simply nudging people into the Vandalay ecosystem.
Wait, this is all an overly complicated plan to sell more product?
Do you have any idea how difficult it is to make something people actually want to buy? It's ridiculously hard! Hey, a new whatever! Well, what color, what model, size, speed, do I need it? All that stress, gone. Because we'll subconsciously make that decision for you.
You're enslaving them.
I'm freeing them with the truth of having a better life.
Suddenly, the lack of data collected from Chai's arm makes a lot more sense. They don't need to do so since they already have a foolproof method that will work on a wider, larger scope, all the while having a monopoly on the consumer's freedom of choice so that only Vandalay Technologies will make the sole decision of what the people want from a product. And this is what I was referring to earlier when I uttered the word consumerism. Not necessarily that consumerism is bad, but more so about the ethics behind consumerism and how companies secretly manipulate the customers into spending into the products is bad, as it only benefits the company as a whole, while us the customers are left at a disadvantage. Similar examples includes the microtransaction issues that we as gamers still face in some capacity, whether it is games like Star Wars Battlefront 2 having loot boxes that grant players random and low chances at getting items such as stronger weapons and star cards that are essentially upgrades that affect stats and abilities in-game, practically a pay-to-win system, or the most mildly recent example, Multiversus, that incentivize buying in-game currency to be the only viable way of getting practically anything from cosmetics, characters you want to play as, to even level difficulty in the game's PvE rifts. This is a gross oversimplification of what players had to deal with, so I'll put a link in the video down below that explains these issues in detail. Sorry, not video, videos. That being said, we, the players, and by extension consumers, do have the free will to choose what to spend on and how much we're willing to spend. So to some degree, we can choose to not participate in a system similar to the examples listed that leave money spending as the only viable option rather than an option among a multitude of other options that we can choose from. Maybe not from others who have spending impulses, you know, the ones that systems prey on the most, but generally we still own our own free will to choose what to do with our wallets. In this world that is HiFiRush, however, Kale and his co-workers were incredibly close to removing that freedom of choice from his customers through the creation of Spectra. This is what Macaron, Cinnamon, Corsica, and especially Peppermint and Chai are rebelling against, as if Chai and even Roxanne Vandalay are susceptible to the whim of Spectra, then who knows how many other students/customers at the Vandalay campus and by proxy to the rest of the world they'll be able to subjugate. Hey Kale, what was it you said to Chai not too long ago?
Stealing my technology and then calling yourself a Rockstar? For doing what exactly?
Taking you down!
Is that what this looks like to you? Cause no, you don't have what it takes, kid.
Yeah, I'll beg to differ. Chai, in every sense of a word, is a rock star and has been embodying that title from the very beginning. Oh sure, I'll throw you a bone and indulge in your judgment. He's arrogant, dim-witted, severely underestimates his opponents, parades around recklessly without even considering for a millisecond the potential consequences to every risky action he takes, likes to take any shortcuts that he can find. To steal a phrase from Peppermint, he's a slacker who's got to shine for the first time, not someone you can take seriously upon first meeting. However, with that all said and done, he's consistently the most reliable and the most optimistic, even in crucial moments that had he hadn't taken those actions, no progress would have been made. And speaking of progress, he accomplished just within a few days way more than he could ever hope to dream of. Meanwhile, you yourself are no better than he is. Arrogant, taking credit for all the hard work, vain, severe underestimation of his peers, surprisingly, you share a lot more in common with the idiot you look down on. But you, sir, stand at the very creation that only exists to inflate and mirror the self-aggrandizing and controlling, pitiful ego you pretend to call a method to self-made success, something that anyone else is willing to help promote as long as they too gain a reward from it. Meanwhile, Chai himself, through his delusional belief of oneself, led him to persist and achieve something even greater than he is, all the while, though begrudgingly at first, allow himself to fit into the idealized version of who he wants to be through connections and friendships he built with his team. Heck, Chai himself admits that he couldn't have gone this far without them. That is the essence of a rock star, not just an identity molded into, not just a man raising his sword at a metaphorical dragon to defeat, but also a man confident in his abilities yet not ashamed to rely on his partners in band. That indeed is a story worth telling in 5 years.